Hello, my friends. SummerSlam is just around the corner. It sounds like it will be Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk with maybe even Seth Rollins as a special guest referee. So I went to the old social media and I wrote this. Send me your booking plans for how Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk should go at SummerSlam. And you did come in your droves, and as always, you're a bit crazy. We can start with a funny one as well, because E. Christ just said, cut for time. You genuinely made me laugh, my friend. And that's why I wanted to put at number one. If we did do that, maybe we get another meltdown, move on. Alistair McKenzie had a very interesting take, because I expected to get some crazy ones, which we did get, and we'll talk about them. But he just wrote, they beat the shit out of each other for 20 or so minutes, and Drew McIntyre wins with the GTS. It's not the worst idea in the world. I think because of the feud in general, we expect there has to be some craziness, there has to be some madness or some shenanigans. Maybe in the first match, if we are going to build for the future, you take the bad guy, and he uses Punk's own move against him, against the 1, 2, 3. Now, maybe you could pepper Seth Rollins in there as well. But sometimes you don't have to over-egg the pudding, especially if maybe we're trying to stretch this out to WrestleMania 41 where we get the Night 1 main event and it's Drew versus Punk for a World Championship or something like that to that effect. So actually, sometimes less is more. We talked about this on another video, and that one just stood out to me. Again, you don't need to, you can keep things simple and just see where it is going to go. So, and you can do it the other way around too. They just fight, and the better warrior on that night wins. And you do a round two. Which brings us to Tim. Tim, thank you very much. And he says, I say Punk wins. Here we go. We're changing it around now, but not cleanly. This leads Drew to go crazy and unhinged, destroying people and things the weeks prior, leading to a second match the next PLE. Drew wins that and gets his vindication. Now, that would tie into the story, right? And if Punk does screw over Drew McIntyre to get the win, you may start walking the line, I mean this in a positive way, of maybe just more and more fans sympathizing with Drew a little bit. Let's not forget, everything he said so far is completely true. He's just doing it in a dickhead kind of a way. And CM Punk is amazing as a troll. CM Punk is an amazing heel, right? He's a great babyface too, but there's something about his heel persona, which I think stands out a lot. So you could do that, absolutely. And I think Drew McIntyre, being about to win, and then he gets hit with a chair or anything like that, it would allow him to come out on Raw and go to Adam Pearce back, happen again. Why do you keep letting this happening? You are ruining my life. So that would be a fun one too. I think what we're learning here as we keep going as well, apart from Matt Paulson, who said Larry on a pole match, no Miss Vince Russo, we're not going to do it. But I kind of feel like if you can come up with the right ending, people will be ready for another match, because it has been the feud of the year. They put in so much work, especially because they've both been injured at points, especially Punk. I mean, that is tremendous stuff. So yeah, I think just pick a winner, but make sure you plant one kind of a seed to where we can do a round 2 and a round 3, because why do a one and done? There ain't no need to do that. Ace Baba's gone a totally different way, and he says, let Drew get his revenge by squashing Punk, then they can rerun it for Bad Blood. He has put a lol in there, so I think he knows what he's doing. The only reason I wouldn't advocate for a squash match here, although usually I do in feuds like this, I think it surprises people, it's just not what fans want to see. There's been so much Bad Blood, ironically, that you want to see a fight. You want to see Drew get his, you want to see CM Punk come back and get his. If it's a squash, I think it's going to deflate people in the wrong way. It'd be the opposite to Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar in 2016. We didn't really know what to expect there, but we certainly didn't think Goldberg was going to whoop Brock's ass. So when we got it, it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I think we have enough of a split here where you want to see these two throw bones. You want to see some proper, just Bad Blood. That's the right word. That's probably what they call that pay-per-view that. They'll main event the damn thing. But you want the feud to feel like a real feud. I keep saying this. When you look up the word feud in the dictionary, this is actually one of the only ones in wrestling which works for that description. So you don't want the fans to feel shortchanged. I think if you gave them a short match, you run the risk of what happened at WrestleMania between Daniel Bryan and Sheamus, right? Wasn't Sheamus' fault, wasn't Daniel Bryan's fault, and ultimately actually worked out in Daniel Bryan's favor moving into WrestleMania 30, but it's different times. At the moment, you do have the fans on your side. There's the synergy between the two. You don't want to ruin it. And Mean Arthur lives up to his main, or Mean Arthur King, I should say. And look, this is something we do have to take into account because the rumors are out there. Rollins screws Punk, and he also costs him the match. Now, we don't know if Seth Rollins is going to be the special guest referee. That's been the rumor. But Seth Rollins is going to be sniffing around, right? Doesn't sound like he's going to have a match on the card. So he's deliberately been injected himself into this, and you'd have to presume that the finish will involve him in some way. It all depends. What direction do we go after that? Because if Drew McIntyre wins, because CM Punk gets screwed by Seth Rollins, do you then make it a 3-way? Do you then pivot across to CM Punk versus, getting confused here, versus Seth? And do you then try and hold off the 3-way for the world title at WrestleMania Night 1? Now, that's interesting too, because I really like that, but then how do you get Gunther involved into this love triangle? Maybe the feud is strong enough, the program is strong enough that we can hold it off for 6 more months, and you just do a triple threat, and there's no world championship on the line. Like, I think at one point you do want one of these what's the word I'm looking for? But one of these examples, one of these options to be for the World Championship. But right now, I think they have enough heat and they have enough interest from the fans that adding a World Championship doesn't really add anything to it. We just want to see, well, who's the better man here and who's going to get one over the other. But I think any idea we have from this point on has to include Seth Rollins, although Big Mike Talk says, big bell rings, Drew Claymores Punk's head into the nosebleeds, winner Drew McIntyre. A lot of people advocating for Drew just killing people. Mike Owens has an idea too. He says, I think it could be a non-finish, going to wind people up. Seth is the rumoured special ref, and I think there's going to be a ton of shenanigans in that match, probably, especially to protect Punk physically in his first match back. A wild brawl between the three of them with Pierce coming out and throwing it out. I don't think you want to do that. I don't think you want a non-finish. I think if you're going to come up with something, it has to be super duper creative, because again, you have this amazing rivalry where people don't know who's going to win. It's not like when you go into most wrestling matches and you bet your life on that guy's going to win and that guy's going to lose. Here you could go either way. You're going to get a bunch of people in Drew's corner, probably more people in Punk's corner, but that's totally fine. I think doing a bait and switch, especially on a pay-per-view, if you did it on a television show like Raw or SmackDown, you'd probably be okay. But on a pay-per-view like Summerslam, premium live event, I don't think you want to do it. You don't want Adam Pearce to take all of that heat and put it on himself, which wouldn't even be his plan. That's just the way the fans would react, especially if you're going to something like SummerSlam. It's probably going to be quite a hardcore base. So the last thing I would do is a non-finish. You have to see a 1, 2, 3, even if it comes via Seth Rollins screwjob. Mathieu Ruel, which I've not pronounced right at all, I do apologize. I think you have the best take. There you go. Sorry to everybody else. There has to be a winner. But you agree with me, essentially. You've said if Seth is a referee, as has been reported, they should take inspiration from SummerSlam 1997. This is what I wanted to happen at Clash of the Castle. Put a stipulation on Seth that he has to count the fall no matter what. He winds up to hit Punk with a chair, but Punk ducks and Seth hits Drew. Seth has to count the 3, Punk wins. That is what I think the fabulous finish is, because we already know that Seth and Drew hate each other. Sorry, Seth and Punk, well, they all hate each other, but Seth and Punk especially hate each other. So to really get Drew to take his emotions and also focus it on someone else so you can start building a 3-way, that is the way to do it. We all know they love Bret Hart. We all know a great thing to do in 2024 is pay a march to old Bret Hart matches. And we haven't done the SummerSlam 1997 finish, I don't think, for ages. And I tell you this, it was brilliant then, it'll be brilliant today. It opens the door for everything that we want to do. Sure, the World Championship isn't on the line here. The reason we did do that is because we need to get the belt on Bret off Undertaker to build to Shawn versus Bret at Survivor Series. We all know the story, don't need to go into it. But that is absolutely what I would do. I think that's the reason that Seth Rollins should be the championship, and we should be totally transparent with it. It should be a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We know what we're doing here, but it just makes the story so much better and also inflates the whole, well, you hate him and he hates you and you hate you, or you all hate everyone. Where's our Nan? She can bake us a cupcake. So that is what I will push to happen in my brain. I'll try and manifest it, and if it does, I'll do a dance of joy. James Perkins tries to be diplomatic, and he says, I say they make it to where whoever loses has to go over to SmackDown and stay there, and then I say put Drew over on the blue brand and let him worry about Logan Paul or the Bloodline, since it was Solo who screwed him out of the Universal Championship. I see what you're doing there. I think that's winding the clock back too much, right? I think that's taking something away from the fans. We want to see CM Punk and Drew fight, right? That's why we're all desperate for CM Punk to be cleared. We want to see them go at it, and I think if you give the fans one thing, then go, ha, you're not getting it anymore, unless it's quite obvious you are actually going to get it. That's what we used to do back in the day. There is so much legs in this program. It should go 6 months minimum. It should go through WrestleMania if we perfectly can, or at least peak at WrestleMania. So all the little plans should be in place. So I think they all need to be on the same show as well, because it makes Raw so much more interesting. Even if they haven't been advertised for it, as soon as Drew comes out, we're like, where's Punk and where's Seth? So I personally wouldn't do that, but I appreciate the suggestion. Zachary Williams has the best idea, because you can't go wrong with a last-second running from Kevin Nash. You're not wrong, Zach. You're not wrong. I like Gary Robertson's suggestion as well, just because he writes it in a way that I think most people would. This is the craziest thing I can think of. I did say try to make them crazy. I don't think it's going to be possible, but hear me out, given how mad this feud has been for months. Drew actually wins clean. Isn't it funny that we're all going around the houses? Why can't Drew just boot him in the head and win? It's kind of like what we did at WrestleMania. I thought there would be some nonsense with the Seth Rollins thing, but ultimately Drew McIntyre just whipped his ass and he beat him 1, 2, 3, becomes what, heavyweight champion, and all the madness comes afterwards. But it hasn't hurt Seth. You know, Seth took some time off to rehab his leg. He comes back. He's still one of, if not the biggest star on Raw. And that is something that I'm trying to advocate for all of wrestling right now. You can win, you can lose. It doesn't affect your character as long as you've got something coming out the fact. Again, it's like real sports. Sometimes the best team takes on the worst team win. The best team is still the best team, but they have to come back fighting. And you could do that with wrestling too. Mike is just nuts because he wants CM Punk to come out cutting a promo about how he was robbed of the WrestleMania main event. We can do that. And it's the summer of Punk, which you could say, even with him being injured, when Drew sneaks out the crowd with a calendar and says summer is over. Double arm DDT and pins Punk. Mike, You all right by me. Jeff Madison has included Seth Rollins as well. He says Seth calls it down the middle as a special guest ref until Drew ducks and Punk hits him with a punch kick, rendering him out cold. Seth comes 2 in time to fast count Punk for the 3, giving Drew the win. Tempers flare and Punk ends up getting the curb stomp while Seth stands tall and Drew gloats. Again, that's kind of a variation of the SummerSlam. I suppose you wouldn't use a chair to the face. That's the only thing WWE probably aren't going to do. Although I think these days they'd probably allow you to do a one and done. But fast counts, I think there's more emotion if you don't do a fast count. I don't know how you would figure that out, but it's not like a problem either. I mean, you're still screwing somebody over. But I think one of the best parts about the SummerSlam 97 finish is that, sure, Michaels waffles the Undertaker with that chair. I actually think we should probably come up with an alternative for that. But that he's knocked him out, right? And because he's damaged him to such a great degree, it then allows Shawn Michaels and Undertaker to go off and have their feud while Bret is still hanging around. And you kind of want a similar thing here. But I like it. I think any suggestion we do have now has to involve Seth because it can become just the worst love triangle of all time. And who doesn't want that? Prince of DDR wants to turn back the clocks. He says, when's the last time WWE had a legit First Blood match? Maybe it's time to bring it back. I don't think that works here. I wouldn't mind seeing a First Blood match back, again, done under the right situation. But I think here, again, because of everything that's happened, you want to see them bleed, which is the worst sentence I'll ever say. It makes you sound like a psychopath. But I think you want it to get so aggressive and so over the top that, yeah, it feels like they could get busted open at any time. I think the first time they do fight, if it is SummerSlam, one of them should get busted open, for sure. I don't know if WWE is still doing that. I don't know what their policy is. I know they don't want to overdo it. But if Drew especially busts Punk over, just because Drew comes across more like the bully, I think that will have a real effect to it, like he did in Chicago, right, when he crushed him with the door and we had blood there. So I don't think you want First Blood, because it technically should end the match too soon. First Blood is just kind of a silly stipulation anyway. I mean, the only one I can remember is Stone Cold versus Kane, and Stone Cold won because he busted his own head open. I can't remember, but I think it was dumb. John has an interesting idea and also brings in Larry the Dog, as everybody did. Larry hits Claymore on Drew. I'd like to see it, but he goes, no, seriously. So Larry, you're gone. Sorry, I'm booked. Drew beats Punk, right? Drew beats Punk. Punk at some point sees the bracelet that has tied in, probably has to tie him in the match as well, goes filled with rage into a frenzy. Drew low bros Punk and hits the Claymore. He goes to hit the Future Shock to break his arm again, and Seth fends him off, hits Punk with the stomp. Wouldn't he hit Drew with the stomp? He was trying to fend him off. I don't know how that works, but I like the idea of including the bracelet. I like the idea. Absolutely, we should double back round to the double arm DDT and pretend that Drew is going to break his arm again. But would Seth Rollins care? You'd have to ask, what's his motive? He hates CM Punk, so maybe you're like, he's going to break your arm. That's actually how Seth laughs too. And we'll finish with Mikey Wils, who says, would now be the right time to say a Hell in a Cell match with last man standing implications? I would say no. This should just be one-on-one, right? We don't need a stipulation. CM Punk wants to beat up Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre wants to beat CM Punk. Maybe Seth Rollins wants to be involved because he thinks they're a bunch of assholes. But after this one, that's when I think all of a sudden you introduce a stipulation being a last man standing. Probably a Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood, because however you finish this one should effortlessly move into that one. I don't think the first match of any kind of a feud should be a stipulation match, because why? Why right now do we need a stipulation match? Not that I'm yelling at you, Mikey. I'm just asking the question in a general fashion. But Drew McIntyre just wants to beat up CM Punk, and CM Punk just wants to beat up Drew McIntyre. At the moment, we can just sign a match, which is what we would do in WWE if it was real, for lack of a better term, and then you get to have them fight. It'd be like in UFC saying, well, we are going to have a match, but we're going to do it on a roof. Why can't we just do it in an octagon? And that's why the finish then has to justify going to a steel cage or a Hell in a Cell or an elimination chamber. That one doesn't make sense. I shouldn't have said it. But I think that should be the way. And I think given that Bad Blood is coming back, which also harks back to the the Shawn Michaels Undertaker Hell in a Cell match, still my favorite one from 1997. That would be a nice homage too. And then we're just playing games with nostalgia, which there's never a problem with because nostalgia is a powerful drug. But I'm super excited about this. I think WWE would have been super smart because even if Punk doesn't get cleared, Seth Rollins is right there, so we can do a, whoopsie daisy. Here's your uncle. But it could main event SummerSlam and I'd be all right with it, but it won't do because the WWE title will. So look, there's some of your ideas. I appreciate them. Now drop some more ideas down there because I'm going to rifle through them too. And then after the match, we can go back and see if anybody has totally smashed it. Although I do think we're getting the SummerSlam 97 finish. Also, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the bell, ding ding, to be part of the notification crew. And if you click that video on the screen right now, that's me talking about what could happen at SummerSlam overall. It's also GorillaMind.com/Simon. You go to Simon, get 10% off. Go to a Go-Go Fitness, Anthony Gogo's fitness app. Really happy to be affiliated with that now. You can go to Simon20 to get some money off that too. Patreon.com/Simon316. Hi, I'm in 316 on all social media, apart from TikTok, which is Simon J. Miller. Simon Miller on Cameo. Get your personalized video messages. They are fun as well. Samson Athletics and Pro Wrestling tees for t-shirts. Otherwise, yeah, just interact with the video because YouTube loves that. You can click as many videos as you can. You don't have to watch them. You can leave the room. YouTube doesn't know. It does now because I've said it out loud, but they're way too busy with people bigger than me. Sound good? All right. Goodbye.